Welcome to the first ever episode of my podcast or YouTube series. I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet, but my name's Gavin Fast, and I'm a big NBA fan, NFL fan, college football fan. I've been watching a lot of the NHL recently, and I might do a little bit of college basketball or MLB, but not too much of that. I want to start this podcast as more of a hobby. So I'm not looking to reach out to a huge audience, but if I do, then that would be amazing. And I can upgrade some equipment and stuff. And I might have some special guests on the podcast, maybe a few of my friends. I might try to interview some like college football players, stuff like that. But for now, let's just start off with a recap of yesterday, which would be May 23rd, 2024. And we had one NBA playoff game and one NHL playoff game that I want to talk about. We'll start first with the NBA game, which was a little more boring in my opinion than the NHL game. We saw Boston defeat Indiana, the Pacers, which was kind of expected. They won by 16 points, 126 to 110, and they're now up 2-0 in the series. They defended home court, they did their job, and now we're going to see if Indiana can respond in Game 3, which would be tomorrow, the 25th. So in this game, Indiana led for quite a bit of the first quarter, but then Boston had a really good second quarter, and they took the lead by 6 at halftime. The Pacers played them close to start the second half. I was thinking maybe there could be an upset there, but then Boston kind of ran away with the game midway through the third quarter, and we saw Halliburton go down with a left hamstring injury. He decided to play through his soreness that he was experiencing. He was reported soreness in his hamstring at halftime, but he played through it. He got injured late in the third quarter, and then things started to get ugly late in the third and the whole fourth quarter for the Pacers with no Halliburton. So now Halliburton's questionable for Game 3. I think if the Pacers want to make this interesting, they're going to need to have him Game 3, or else we could see another blowout, because he runs that offense. So the stars that stood out to me in this game, we went kind of simple with it. The leading scores for each team. I tried to get fancy with it, but these were just flat out the two best players of the night. We saw Siakam on the losing team for the Pacers shoot 13 for 17, which is 76%, and then he went a perfect 2 for 2 from 3. He finished with 28 points. He has a really good turnaround jumper, and he's having a really good postseason. He's averaging nearly 22 points. It's 21.7, and he's shooting 55% from the field. So in a playoff run, to average 22 on 55%, he's having a really good postseason. I wish that they could pull off a couple upsets against the Celtics, but we'll see. I don't know if it's going to happen. But on the Celtics tonight, we saw Jaylen Brown drop 40, and he shot 52% from the field. He was hitting threes. He was hitting some tough finishes at the rim, and this is his second straight good game. I think he had like 26 or maybe 27 in Game 1. He was in the high 20s in Game 1 with the game tying 3 to send it to overtime, so he's having a great series. Arguably, if he was out for Game 1 and 2, the Pacers could be up 2-0. I don't want to say that they would, but if instead of Porzingis being out, if Jaylen Brown was out, it'd be a lot more interesting. But that's not the case. Jaylen Brown has been torching the Pacers. So some notes that I took away from this game, it wasn't specifically this game, but we saw another poor three-point shooting night from Jason Tatum, and also their best shooter, arguably their best shooter, coming off the bench, Sam Hauser. So both of them must improve if they want to win the championship, in my opinion. To beat the Mavericks or the Timberwolves, you can't have Tatum and Hauser missing threes. You can't have, I think this game they went a combined, I want to say 1 for 9. I have the stats for the last two. In the last two games, we saw Tatum shoot 3 for 15 from 3, so it's 20%. We saw Hauser go 0 for 6. And then in the last 7 games, which would be the whole Pacers series and the whole Cavs series, Tatum has gone 12 for 48 from 3, and Hauser's been 3 of 15 from 3. So we're seeing 25% from Tatum in the last 2 series and 20% from Hauser in the last 2 series. Like, that could cut it against the Cavs, the Heat, the Pacers, but if you're in the finals against the Mavs, the Timberwolves, both of those players need to be 35% or above. So those are the takeaways I had from the NBA game. If I had to predict this series as of now, if Halliburton plays game 3, I think they'll take game 3. And then I will say like Celtics in 5. If Halliburton doesn't play game 3, I think it's a sweep. So kind of a boring Eastern Conference Finals, but it's all right. So for the NHL last night, we saw game 1 of the Oilers and the Stars, and the Oilers beat the Stars in an upset on the road, a very minor upset. They won in double overtime, 3-2. So this gives the Oilers a 1-0 lead. I wrote down some notes after a scoreless first period. So the game started off very, very slow, very boring. I didn't watch the first period. I started watching midway through the second. So I missed the first 3 goals. We saw Draisaitl open up the scoring less than a minute into the second period. And then about 3 minutes of hockey later, we saw Zach Hyman score a goal to put the Oilers up 2-0, kind of suck the life out of the building. So, but then we saw the veteran Tyler Seguin, a few minutes later, put the Stars on the board to make it a 2-1 game. He was assisted by his friend Jamie Benn, who has also been on the team with him for a while. I think Seguin's played 11 seasons with the Stars, and Ben has played 15 seasons with the Stars, so we saw that chemistry connect on their first goal. And then the remainder of the second period went scoreless. Most of the third period went scoreless, so we're seeing a 2-1 game late in the third. And then Seguin finds another goal. Another goal with a good pass from Dadonov. I wasn't really familiar with him until the playoffs. It was a redirect pass from Robertson, I believe. And this forces overtime. There was less than 4 minutes remaining when Seguin tied the game up. So Dallas is going nuts. The stadium is starting to get electric. Not as much of a boring game as it was in the first period. So we finally have some momentum here by the Stars. Overtime will start off with McDavid receiving a double minor high sticking penalty. So the Stars will have a 4-minute power play. I thought for sure the Stars were going to score, but we have to remember there's no Rupee hints in this game. Rupee hints. So that's a big part of their offense. And the Oilers kill off both minor penalties, despite Jason Robertson hitting the crossbar twice. Hitting the post twice. It was top bar once, and I think it was either top bar and then left bar, or right bar and then left bar, something like that. But anyways, the Oilers kill off the 4 minutes, and later in overtime, McDavid makes a nifty move. He goes backhand, then forehand, and Jake Ottinger makes an amazing save with his stick. McDavid just hesitated a little bit too long. I don't really know what he was doing, but he waited too long. Ottinger was able to get his stick on it, and McDavid could not get the puck up. But McDavid will make up for it early in the second overtime. I think it was 32 seconds in. He scores a redirect goal from a Bouchard pass. He kind of just tips it in. Bouchard's shot wasn't on net, so Bouchard puts it to McDavid right in front of the net, and then he tips on into left side. So some stats that I took away from this game after the Oilers take it 3-2. On the power play, the Oilers only had 1 power play the whole game, and I think on Twitter I saw that it was due to too many men on the ice. So I don't know, Stars, I guess, were either playing discipline or the refs just weren't really blowing the whistle in favor of the Oilers. But the Oilers went 0-for-1 on their 1 power play, and the Stars had 5 power plays, and they could not score a single goal. Again, Hintz is out. I think that would be a little bit different if Hintz was in. and I think the Stars would probably win this game, but that's not the case. And the Oilers have killed 18 straight penalties, kind of insane for a team that used to struggle on the PK, used to struggle just defensively in general. And we saw a really good game from Stuart Skinner. He's kind of been wishy-washy this postseason, but he had a great game. Another PK stat for the Oilers is that they've killed 22 out of their, they've killed 21 out of their last 22 penalties this postseason. So that's a crazy stat for the Oilers. They've also won 22 in their franchise history. They've won 22 out of 25 series when winning game one. So taking game one, especially on the road for the Oilers, is huge. So now they kind of flip the home advantage to themselves. If they can win their home games, they'll get it done in 6. And for the Stars, they've now lost 7 straight game ones. So I think it's the longest active streak in the NHL. I saw on Twitter. 7 straight game ones. They know how to bounce back from game one. They've done it in round 1. They've done it in round 2. So now in the Western Conference Finals, they're going to try to bounce back from down 1-0. They're 3-5 at home, the Stars, and they're 5-1 on the road this postseason. So kind of weird for the Stars, not playing too well at home, but maybe they can take a game or two in Edmonton to try to make the series close. So yeah, as I said earlier, they're going to need hints to improve the offense, to improve the power play, and that's what they're going to need to do to make it interesting, because 0 for 5 on the power play, that's not going to cut it. This Oilers, they only had 1 power play this game. Realistically, they should be getting 2, 3, 4 power plays a game, scoring on probably 1 or 2 of those, with McDavid and Draisaitl both healthy, and they're both playing really well this postseason too. We've seen Draisaitl score a point or more in all 13 of his playoff games, and he has 25 total points. So he's averaging almost 2 points a game in the playoffs, and they've played the Canucks, who are a pretty good defensive team, and they played the Kings, who are also a decent defensive team. And we saw him score tonight against the Stars, so he's on fire. I noted that Draisaitl is plus 550 to win the Conn Smythe trophy. That's the second best odds behind his teammate McDavid. The Oilers are plus 200 to win it all, so if you do like the Oilers to win it all, I'd suggest Draisaitl plus 550 to win the Conn Smythe trophy. We see he has 9 goals and 16 assists in their 13 games, and McDavid only has 3 goals and 20 assists in their 13 games. So that's all I got for the NHL. So that's it for yesterday's recap. I'm going to do a little bit of an extra thing, and I want to start a little series called Way Too Early College Football Win Totals. So self-explanatory. I might do 1 per episode or 2 per episode. But I've been doing my research, and I'm very confident in this pick. I have Virginia Tech over 7.5 wins for the 2024 season. On Hard Rock, it's minus 145 to go over 7.5. If you want to go to DraftKings, though, you can get the 8. So you have push potential. You go over 8 is minus 110. I kind of prefer over 7.5, though. So this year, Virginia Tech is running it back. They have Kyron Drones as their quarterback, who I'll go more in depth on in a little bit. And then we have Brent Pry in his 3rd year as a head coach. So they're returning the most starters in the country. They return 22 out of 24 of their starters. That's including the kicker and the punter. They lose 2 players on defense, which they replace in the transfer portal. So in the transfer portal, they're adding 5 transfers. It's 3 defensive tackles, 1 linebacker, and 1 right guard. And their defensive tackles, which are projected to start this year, come from Duke and Oklahoma. So you have an Elko product, you have a Venables product. They've both been playing under great defensive head coaches. They should be able to bring some knowledge as some experienced defensive tackles into this defense. And I think Brent Pry's going to love that. So 4 of those transfers will start. We also have one of the linebackers, or the only linebacker starting, and the only right guard starting. As I said earlier, Brent Pry is going into his third season. Last season, he finished very strong. They went 5-2 in their last 7 games after a poor 2-4 start, and they finished 7-6 with a 5-3 conference record, which is pretty impressive. They didn't really have too high of expectations last year, but the reason for the big turnaround is due to drones at quarterback, which I'll go in depth on in a second after I talk about the receiver that they'll be returning, Ali Jennings. Jennings had, in 2021 with Old Dominion, he had over 1,000 yards, and then the season after, he had 959 yards, but only played 9 games in 2022, which is about 106 yards per game. Last season, he was injured in week 2 of 2023, and he only recorded stats in the week 1 game where he had 5 receptions and 72 yards. So their quarterback is 4-star dual threat Kyron Drones. He's going to be starting week 1 for the Hokies. He did not start last year. He was a redshirt sophomore, and Virginia Tech's starting quarterback, I want to say his name is Grant Wells, last year, went down with an injury, and Drones took over week 3, impressed everybody, and then continued to improve. So after the first 6 games, that's when the winning streak, or not necessarily winning streak, but finishing 5-2 was a lot of thanks to Drones, and he was improving as the season went on. His stats last year, he started 11 games, so the last 11 out of 13 of the games, and he threw for 2,084 yards, 17 touchdowns, and only 3 interceptions. He rushed for 818 yards and 5 touchdowns, and I don't have this written down, but I'm pretty sure it was a 56% completion percentage, so that could go up a little bit. But again, last year he was young, he was inexperienced, so I expect that to go up a little bit. A 17-3 touchdown interception ratio as a redshirt sophomore is really great. So I think he could definitely be one of the star quarterbacks in the ACC this year, maybe even in the country, especially because he's got that dual threat aspect to him. He could rush for 1,000, pass for maybe 3,000, maybe even 3,500 this year. So in ESPN's post-spring rankings, which were just posted like 4 days ago, so it's pretty updated, Virginia Tech was ranked number 21 in the country. They also play a pretty weak schedule. I wrote it down here. We have at Vandy, then versus Marshall, which is going to be a revenge game. They did lose to Marshall last year. Then we have at Old Dominion, versus Rutgers, at Miami, who was ranked 24 in that ESPN poll that I was referencing. Then it's at Stanford versus Boston College versus Georgia Tech, at Syracuse. Then they get Clemson at home, so versus Clemson, number 16 in that ESPN poll. Then you get at Duke and then versus Virginia. So you get Virginia at home, your rivalry game. Looking at the schedule, I expect Virginia Tech to be a touchdown or more favorites in probably all of these games. Maybe Syracuse might be a little less than touchdown, and then Miami and Clemson. So 10 out of 12 of the games, I think they'll be touchdown or more favorites. Syracuse is a maybe 4-5 point favorite. And then I see at Miami and versus Clemson. Those are probably pick'em games, right? So let's say they lose the pick'em games. They're favored in 10 games. Maybe they'll lose one of those. Maybe it'll be at Syracuse or at Stanford, or I don't know. They have a pretty easy schedule. I think 8 games is very manageable. I think even 9 games, I'm expecting them to win 9 games. So yeah. I wrote down their ACC championship odds are plus 1750 on Hard Rock. I did some line shopping. I think it was plus 1,400 on DraftKings, but plus 1750 on Hard Rock, the 6th best odds in the ACC. I kind of expected it to be higher. I really like Virginia Tech more than NC State. I like it more than Louisville. So yeah, $20 will win you $370 on Hard Rock. In the offseason, we saw the quarterback Drones and then the wide receivers Felton and Jennings traveled down to Miami to train with Cam Ward, Shador Sanders, and their trainers. So although Brent Pry is a defensive-minded head coach, although they're bringing in 4 defensive transfers, I think really we're going to see a great balance of defense and offense. You have the returning production on offense. You're bringing back a ton of wide receivers. You have a ton of potential in your quarterback. And then you have a defensive-minded head coach with maybe the talent isn't as promising as the offense, but I think coaching-wise, you can stay in it defensively as well. So over 7.5, Virginia Tech wins. And then a little sprinkle on the ACC championship when it hurt. And that's it for my college football win totals. I only have that one team for today. I'll be doing some more research, trying to get a few more at you guys. And hopefully I can get out a video for today's best bets in the NBA and the NHL. I'll try to get that out and posted. And if you stayed for the whole podcast, I appreciate it. And thanks for checking me